If you were a crook, would you say drive a Ferrari and wear gold chains at 11 o'clock in the morning?
Some of the silly ones do, but I wouldn't. He was a Mexican cartel member.
Yep.
Walking down Collins Street, and he was dragging a suitcase behind him that we knew contained hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I was just like, why is there a cartel member walking down Collins Street in the middle of the day?
That is very
And I was just like, what have I walked into?
If we were writing a story about this, there's the start. I'm Andrew Rule. This is Life and Crimes. Our guest today, Dave Bartlett. Dave had 11 years with Victoria Police, including as a detective at St Kilda Road with a counter-terrorism unit before moving to the Australian Crime Commission, which later became the Australian Criminal Intelligence Commission. He was an investigator for 6 years across several operational and intelligence roles. He trained with the FBI in Washington on covert cyber operations and is a 2017 Churchill Fellow. And that means Dave, or David, which do you prefer?
David's good.
David was awarded the Churchill Fellowship, which meant he got to go overseas and study. Where did you go and how long were you there?
I flew to New York initially, spent time with the NYPD, spent time with the DEA, FBI. FBI were very gracious. They let me go down to one of their covert training facilities just south of Washington. So time in Washington, D.C., New York, and then went up to Canada. Spent 2 weeks with the Mounted Police, RCMP, the Mounties, and then went across to the UK and spent about a month in London. And then spent a little bit of time with the Dutch police as well, and Europol. So all up, I was away for 3 months.
Right.
And the point of it was to build relationships with our closest law enforcement intelligence partners, but also to understand how they manage some of the more covert collection capabilities that we had in Australia and how we could share information because the world is getting smaller, and how can we work with our overseas partners more collaboratively.
Now, Dave came in to our studio here at the Herald Sun Empire probably 2 or 3 years ago at least, and we had a long and interesting discussion, but we had to spike it at the time because of some problems with security, and that was a very good thing, probably good for Dave's safety, but he's been able to see his way clear to talk to us again about certain aspects of his career. Now, David, I can't remember all the things you've done, but there are many. Tell us who you are and a brief resume of what you've been up to in your time on the side of law and order against the forces of evil.
Thank you for having me back for the
No
second
problem.
time, first of all.
Well, your bribery will get you everywhere.
I did that. Bottle of wine went a long way, I think.
Yeah.
So thank you. Yeah, I have. I've done a lot in my 15-year career with the police. I jumped at every opportunity I could take.
Yeah.
Straight out of the academy, I was looking for special task forces, temporary duties.
Yeah.
Any opportunity I could take, I jumped at. So I actually only spent about 3.5 years in uniform.
Really?
Out of 15 years.
Where did you do that, just briefly?
Initially at transit. So I was on the trains. So
Yeah.
that predates PSOs.
Right.
So I spent about 12 months on the trains, and then I spent 2.5 years at Paran, which was extremely eye-opening across Chapel Street in that area.
I guess some of the train stuff might be a little bit late at night too, would it be?
Yeah,
Did it get a bit exciting?
Yeah, trains were good, and it gave me a good opportunity to start talking to community. It was a really good community policing start, which I think is a bit of a miss now for general duties cops because of PSOs. It was a great training ground, a great place to start learning.
Start learning how to talk to people, how to approach them, how to defuse a situation.
Absolutely.
Those skills which are critical at all levels of the police force.
At all levels.
And once you got away from that, you went to
Paran uniform.
Paran, and you said that's an eye opener.
That was an eye opener.
Always has been.
Oh my goodness, the amount of jobs I went to at the Love Machine, and that is still in the news. So I have a bit of a chuckle every time I see that on the news.
They shoot people there.
They shoot people, they stab people. I'm surprised they've still got a liquor license, but yeah, that has been non-stop. That was 2006 I was there when they were having problems. So I mean, that's almost 20 years they've been in the media and they're still kicking, but Paran was great.
Do the people that run and you don't have to comment, but would people who run large venues like that have a lot of money to spend on skilled lawyers to allow them to retain their liquor licence by going to VCAT or to various courts?
I'd say so. Yeah.
You'd think so, because it's amazing, isn't it?
The inference is there, definitely. They make a lot of money. That joint's pumping on the weekends, so there's obviously an incentive there for them to keep their
And they
doors
drink
open.
a lot of water.
Drink a lot of water. I don't even know if they've got a liquor license, to be honest.
They don't need one. Just drink water. So it's amazing, really, how it works.
It was a fun story, actually. I've had a really keen interest in human intelligence my whole career. So that's informers, that's snitches, human sources, as they call it. And we touched on that during our last chat. But what I remember from the Love Machine, as we're on that, that was where I actually picked up my first human source and my first informer. And
what sort of person? Which gender?
This is interesting. It was a young man. He was probably only 19, but he was trying to pass counterfeit notes across the counter. So I got him for something like that, which I thought was quite strange. But then he became quite cooperative.
Did he?
With police, and we ended up using him for a number of years. Actually, he was quite good in the drug scene in Chapel Street. So I'd only been out of the academy for just over a year, and thrown into the world of covert human sources and informers, which I thought was a great opportunity.
Why did you end up doing that? What did somebody else above you in the hierarchy see in you that made they said, let's send Dave or David to do that instead of something else?
That's a fascinating question. I actually remember a more senior Connie, but a more senior Connie encouraging me to take that course of action. I believe it was a he, I remember who it was. I seem to recall him encouraging me to do it when he could have done it himself. He was a good operator, but he, for whatever reason, saw it as a good learning opportunity for me, and I thank him for that.
And do you feel that you have a particular personal traits that make you good at, and just a persona, even the way you look, perhaps, that makes you a good fit for that, because you don't look like a 6'4" flat-footed copper, a rugby forward or something.
I've reflected a lot on that over my career, and I've always been a fairly emotionally intelligent, self-aware person that thrives on human connection.
Right. Yeah.
And if you look through my career in and out of the police force, I've always excelled in areas where I am face-to-face with people and I am talking to people. And the amount of time someone says to me, I don't know why I'm telling you this, I've heard that phrase hundreds of times throughout my life.
And what is that, a sense of that you're a good listener?
I'm calm, I'm a good listener.
Yeah. You engender confidence in that way. You're not threatening. Well, you're not trying to stand over people.
No, I was never that kind of cop, and I think I definitely saw police like that in the job.
Oh yeah,
and we all know they exist, and that's not. I didn't join.
I thought they studied it at the academy.
No, no, they don't. Funnily enough, I was never one of those heavy-handed cops. I was always one to go into a room and move the interview table to the side and sit like we are here on two easy chairs and talk to crooks like that.
So you were very good at being a good cop.
Yeah, very much so, the good cop.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, you said inside and outside the force. What else did you do were you out in the world before you joined?
Just briefly, I did an IT degree at Swinburne and then ran a business in Hawthorne for 2 years. But prior to that, I grew up in quite a Christian family. I'm no longer religious, but I was always interested in that kind of softer side of the world. And
that it's always interesting that at least you know what it is that you are very familiar with, the things that you don't necessarily believe in, but they do have their influence on. Yeah, they do. On your worldview and your behaviour. And that's one of the things that I do like about religion. Not that we'll talk about religion today, but the basic elements of it are just be a good person. Of course. And treat people with respect and listen. And the description of me being a calm person is only something that I really realised in the last few years, that people would describe me as being calm. And I think maybe that rubbed off on crooks and victims and witnesses when they were in times of high anxiety, that I elicited that level of calm for them. Crooks, most of the time, it seems to me to be highly agitated people. Yeah. Ill at ease, some of them. Especially when they're, in handcuffs or in an interview room. It's interesting, with some of these gangsters that were, when they were shot dead and they did the post-mortems. Two things crop up with post-mortems and financial post-mortems. One is often they're not as wealthy as people thought. Mm-hmm. And the second thing is that in their systems, these super cool, tough crooks, they got drugs to make them calmer. To bring them down, like a Xanax or a Valium or something. Yeah. They're taking Valium or something to stay calm. Yeah. Because they were worried about the life they're leading and they had fears and all the rest of it, which they masked, but underneath. And professionals do the same thing. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, people that are in high-flying
jobs often use cocaine and then come down with a Xanax or a Valium to right themselves before they go to work. So crooks probably have the same kind of roller coaster of dopamine hits and
that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting.
You saw that firsthand.
Yeah, I did. And I guess maybe my nature brought them down, and they often started telling me things, and maybe that's why that senior Connie saw that in me to get a human source, was because that person started talking to me. And I mean, I'll talk a bit more about my career in a moment, but I've had plenty of human sources like that over my time period. So I went from Paran to what was called the Divisional Response Unit in the city in 2008, and that was in a small unit run by an ex-armed robbery detective sergeant. That was a great little team. It was just the sergeant and 4 of us, and we were in plain clothes, and we would often work the corner of King Street and Flinders Lane on the weekends, going to nightclubs. We had sources that were operating, so again, human sources or informers operating in different nightclubs. I remember this one particular night, the Special Operations Group used to have to do voluntary duties back in uniform. So these are the guys that are usually in their black pajamas and do a little work that we're seeing up in Port Punker at the moment, but they would come out on a Saturday night and do shifts in uniform like any other police officer.
Did they?
And I don't remember exactly why, but it was fascinating. So my sergeant knew one of the guys from the SOG on a Saturday night, and there was about 6 members of the SOG working, and the sergeant said, look, we've got good information from a human source that there's someone up in a particular nightclub on the first level sitting on this couch on the far left dealing drugs. So the sergeant spoke to the SOG team leader and asked for help to maybe go into the nightclub and arrest this individual. So we all lined up behind these guys from the SOG who looked like normal police. It was Saturday night, Chapel Street, Flinders Lane and King Street. And we went order of march. I was probably like 7th behind the SOG. The SOG went up there, they went up the stairs, went round to the left. And before I could even get around the corner, there's this poor young kid in hog-tied on the floor with the SOG standing around him. I'm like, that is the most efficient arrest I've ever seen in my life. I didn't even see it because it happened so quickly. Yeah. And then, they marched him out with his head down like we've seen in the news, and that was a funny night.
Very good news.
Yeah.
So you learnt from that sort of stuff one way to handle things.
Yep.
And
time and place.
Time and place. How did you sort of disguise yourself from week to week so they didn't all get to know straight away that you were a cop?
Yeah. I wasn't full-time undercover, so I was plain clothes work. So we often still walked around with a lanyard around our necks, and when you're managing human sources, you do it in a way that you meet them in places that are very secure.
Yes.
And you take certain operational security protocols before and after that meeting to make sure that people don't,
that you're not
seen and followed and that kind of thing. So, and there's training that goes along with all that
all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so you'd say, don't talk to me here. Go, well, mate, X, Y, Z.
Yeah, and there's certain things like, it's a really simple thing, but you don't agree on a prearranged location because, if you're dealing with crooks, because 99% of the time they were still offending while they were helping the police.
Yes.
So, the worst thing you can do is say, look, let's meet at this cafe at 1:00, because that gives them time to set up an ambush or set up someone listening, someone taking photographs of you. So it's a very simple method of keeping yourself secure, and I won't go into many more, but that's a really obvious one. Even as a common sense approach, you shouldn't do that.
Well, good point. Yeah.
So you ring them and say, look, meet at the corner of Elizabeth and
So I'll give
Lonsdale.
you a ring on Wednesday morning.
Yeah.
And then we'll...
Just be in the city, I'll give you a call.
Yeah.
And then tell them where to go.
Yeah.
Don't give them any opportunity. And that gives us the advantage of knowing where we're going to meet them, so we can put anything in place that we need to at that location. But it gives us the level of control.
The whip hand, so to speak.
Yeah.
In that time working that, what did you call that?
Divisional Response Unit.
Divisional Response.
Yeah, Regional Response Unit.
Which could cover a range of activities. What was your best pinch, do you think, in that era?
That was my introduction to surveillance and telephone intercepts.
Yeah.
So in the police force, back then at least, I was talking about 2008 to 2010, it was still relatively hard to get to listen to people's phones. People were still talking on their phones, but getting the paperwork through legal and everything else was still quite hard. But that was an introduction. I was running several investigations where we were listening to phones, and that was the first time I'd been exposed to that. And I'd only been in the job at that point through 3 years. Yeah, just on 3 years. And suddenly got the headphones on listening to people's phones. Like that just opened my world to some of the amazing technical surveillance capabilities that law enforcement have and the evidence and intelligence collection aspects, which I loved.
It strikes me, and I really have no great insight, so I'm guessing, that the blanket use of phones in the world, really, and the fact that everybody relies on them so much. I was at the children's court the other day, and every alleged child in there, some of whom are shaving, I have to say, and clearly drove, Harley Davidsons to court, but all of them, right down to 10-year-olds, they're all in there playing with their phones and texting and all the rest of it, which means every day there's millions of messages and words, some of which must be incriminating or evidentiary, and it's very hard for people to break that habit, isn't it?
Yeah,
because this is how they communicate. They don't think about it.
No, it's absolutely second nature. I mean, I've got an 18-year-old son who he plays video games on his PC, but he has a mobile phone on his desk that has a group call of all his mates on a video call.
Yeah.
So he's using, and he's also talking to them during the game as well on the keyboard. So he's using multiple devices, multiple communication methods, and we have to assume that crooks are doing the same thing.
And it's hard for them not to, and it's easy for you and yours to tap into it.
Yeah, it was easier back in 2008 because there were less encrypted apps, there were less advanced apps on phones. I did a presentation when I was working for the feds on kind of the roadmap towards where telephone intercepts were going to become less effective because people were just ringing each other less. The fact that you can call someone now on WhatsApp and it's fully encrypted, why would you call them using a normal phone number?
Of course.
Because
I notice it myself with people saying, listen, use X or Y, the encrypted stuff.
I'm not saying anything that's not in the public domain. It's the fact that you've got encrypted apps, so why wouldn't crooks use them? Yeah, and I even read this article the other day. There was a cybersecurity expert trying to test the age verification laws for her kids, and she tried to put all these kind of restrictions on her kids, and it was like a red teaming, like a hacking experiment with her kids, and she found out that her daughter got around all of these controls that she put in place by using Pinterest. And you can chat in Pinterest and share information in Pinterest. So there's so many apps that now have ways to communicate. It just goes on and on and on.
There's nothing kids don't know.
No, they get around things very quickly, and crooks will be the same.
And they're straight onto it, and they tell each other immediately.
Yeah.
The old shelter shed rule applies, doesn't it? Everyone knows everything.
Everyone knows everything, and gossip and information can fly around the world.
Now, you referred to your time in the feds. Tell me, by what way did you progress up or sideways or down or whatever it is to go from Victoria Police, working the nightclub circuit in King Street and around there, to other jobs in law enforcement? So
2010, I became a detective, and my first official posting was to the Victoria Police State Intelligence Division under Stuart Bateson and Neil Patterson.
Yeah.
And I spent 2 years there as a new detective working on several portfolios, including right-wing extremism, which has popped up again now. I worked on critical infrastructure, so I did a lot of work in Gippsland looking at the safety and security of some of our most critical infrastructure in Victoria. And I also worked in organised crime for 2 years. So that, again, was my introduction to what I found I loved was organised crime and money laundering. During those 2 years at St Kilda Road in 2010, Stuart Bateson was a great mentor. He was the detective inspector at the time.
Yep.
And, that opened my eyes to organised crime and how rife it was in Victoria and Australia at the time. And 2 years later, so 2012, the Australian Crime Commission were at that time rotating Victoria police detectives through as investigators. And the Australian Crime Commission at that time in 2012 were a very small organisation. They only had about 180 staff nationally.
Yep.
They were the old NCA, National Crime Agency, that had been around a long time. Yep. Very small, very agile agency with amazing surveillance powers. They had their own act which allowed them to get surveillance and other collection activities very, very quickly. I'm talking hours, not days. Mm-hmm. So what would normally take Victoria Police maybe a week to get organised, unless it was a life-threatening matter, would take the ACC at that time hours. So this opportunity came up to get seconded there as an investigator, so I applied for that position and got it.
Yeah, seconded. So you're still
VicPol.
Still under the umbrella of VicPol.
Yeah, still under the umbrella of VicPol. So I basically
didn't lose your super and all.
Didn't lose my super, all that kind of thing. So I ended up being seconded there for 2 years initially as an investigator. Then I took leave without pay for a year for a third year, and then ended up going on full time and resigning from Victoria Police in 2016 officially.
Officially, you'd had some 6 years in the VicPol?
Yeah, officially only 7 years, 2005 to 2012.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I was on seconded.
And what were the highlights and lowlights of that life?
I loved that job. I remember my first few weeks as an investigator at the Australian Crime Commission in 2012. Our office was on Flinders Lane, and we went out to do surveillance on a person of interest that the Drug Enforcement Agency had suggested we keep an eye on in the States, the DEA. So we went out to Collins Street and we did surveillance on a particular individual, and I was just following people along because I was new. And once we looked at the profile of this person, he was a Mexican cartel member.
Yep.
Walking down Collins Street, and he was dragging a suitcase behind him that we knew contained hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I was just like, why is there a cartel member walking down Collins Street in the middle of the day?
That is a very good question.
And I was just like, what have I walked into?
If we were writing a story about this, there's the start.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, that just opened my eyes even more.
What does a Mexican cartel member look like, at least this one?
Mexican and normal. Like
Yeah.
we've got so many South American tourists here, and
blends
Central American
right in.
tourists blends right in.
Yeah.
And that's what makes some of these groups so effective, is their ability to blend in.
Didn't have a Zapata moustache, a sombrero and a horse.
I wish he did. It would have made surveillance a bit
Would've
easier.
made- yeah, would've-
But no, and I guess that was just like, I literally said to someone next to me, do we seriously have cartel members in Melbourne? And they're like, yes, of course we do. Like looking at me stupidly. And I was like, okay, I've got a bit to learn here.
Okay. What do we think he was up to?
Laundering money on behalf of his cartels. So what these bigger organised crime groups do is they send a forward person to do things on their behalf.
Mm-hmm.
So from a drug importing perspective, they used to call them shore parties. So they actually organise a group of people to go to the destination of where drugs are landing and facilitate the receiving of those drugs. And it's the same with money. If there's money changing hands, they will send a trusted person to make sure that that transaction or that handover goes off according to plan.
Right. These are fairly
Definitely.
trusted blokes.
Definitely.
Quick thinkers, smart, experienced, and probably moderately deadly,
Yeah.
potentially.
Yeah, I can't remember the job now, but we did occasionally have people in our surveillance profiles that were hitmen back in Colombia and Mexico, and that was always interesting.
That would be.
Yeah, there was another one in Sydney who was waiting for money to come in, and
Yeah.
this is another funny story. He was a shore party for money, so he was sitting in Sydney waiting for money to come to him to facilitate a deal, and he was given an allowance by his cartel back in Colombia, I think this one was, and he ran out of money.
Dear, oh dear.
Yeah, he had a little apartment, little Airbnb he was renting, but that at least he had a roof over his head, but he had no money. So he went to the supermarket and he bought himself an onion because that's all he could afford,
No.
and he just bit straight into it. Straight into a fresh onion, straight off the
Tony
off the
Abbott,
shelf.
He did that.
Did he?
That is remarkable.
So seeing that on the surveillance footage, just like, why is he eating an onion? It's all he could afford.
He was broke.
He was broke. They
And
left
of
him.
course, he really would have nowhere to turn.
No, he couldn't go to Centrelink,
And he
and
probably didn't want to just pull a little robbery or anything.
no, he doesn't
dirty
want to
'cause
bring any attention to
he's
himself.
got- no.
So, sometimes these guys are left, predominantly they are guys, are left to just get the job done because they're a long way from home.
Yeah.
Occasionally we would hear stories about some of these men, again, being blackmailed or extorted to come to Australia to do this, and if they didn't do what they were meant to do in Australia, either their family would be killed or someone harmed back in their origin country.
wicked
So there's a lot of nasty stuff that goes on.
South American crime is off the scale, isn't it, on that stuff?
Well, yeah,
They wipe out families. And
they don't muck around.
I have a suspicion the Russians might be not much different.
Yeah, they're all
So
serious dudes. Yeah, we didn't see a lot of
Don't
Russian
hear much
organised
about
crime.
them here, but
No. I mean, when you think about organised crime, they're all like that. Italian organised crime, they're just very, very entrenched in everyday life here in Australia. They're just not as out there as other groups. in Australia.
and probably not as keen to wipe out entire families.
No, they're not. Maybe back in the earlier days they
Yeah,
were, but they're very entrenched with legitimate businesses now. So it's all
of
just
course.
it's all mixed in.
Sometimes, no names, no pack drill, but I have occasionally been to large stores and I think I'm in a place that, it could be an acre under one roof and they must sell a lot of, peaches or bananas or... it's amazing. And, could it be that this was set up using money from other endeavours? That's
Yeah.
right. These are the thoughts that run through my head.
Well, it's mine too, I agree. And organised crime needs to try and legitimise their money as much as they can. It doesn't matter where they come from. It's how do they get to a point where they can spend it.
They're
Because it's
tip it over.
It's fine to make the money, but you can't really get away from the ACO at the moment if you're suddenly driving around with a Ferrari.
No.
You've got to have some kind of way to make it legitimised, and that's where money laundering comes in.
If you were a crook or advising a crook, would you say drive a Ferrari and wear gold chains at 11 o'clock in the morning, or what would you do?
Some of the silly ones do, but I wouldn't.
What would
I do?
What would you wear?
Depends how much you want to blend in, but a lot of this stuff comes back to people's egos. So it's very hard, like you were saying earlier, about the psychology behind crooks, and some of them can't help themselves. It's the ego.
It's in them.
It's in them, yeah. And when they land those big deals and those big checks, it's very hard to discreetly send that money offshore and be patient and, put it into super, for example.
Yeah. And I guess there must be cool, calm, sensible crooks, but we don't see them.
Yep.
They stay under the radar.
I reflect on that as well as my time, even in Victoria Police, so how I used to pull over the overtly looking crooks. I'm like, the other ones I probably shouldn't even have to worry about. Like, they'll get caught because they're probably a lot sillier.
Where's the bloke in the cardigan in the Volvo?
Correct. So one of the advice I got in my early days was always look for rental cars. So whenever I checked a car, if it was a rental car, I'd pull it over. Because often crooks, and I saw some of the biggest, burliest dudes, again, mostly hire little Barinas, little runabout cars to do their dirty work so they can just blend in.
Okay.
So whenever I saw a rental car, they usually got a check.
That is interesting. So the counterintuitive thing. And do they rent them in whose name? How do they organise that?
Yeah, it's a bit harder now to fake IDs, but sometimes they might use a dodgy looking fake overseas passport where, a budget, they're not really going to be too fussed about a passport. Do they really know if it's legitimate? Spanish passport, they don't really know.
Oh, you're an Irish national, okay.
Yeah, they're not really going to check that. Whereas if you try to fake a Victoria or New South Wales licence, it might be a bit more obvious because they're seeing them all the time.
Right.
Generally, you do need pretty good ID.
Interesting.
So,
hi, it's Gary Jubilant here. Do you want a real and raw look inside the world of crime? Well then check out my podcast, I Catch Killers, where I interview people from all sides of the law.
I draw my firearm and I went into fight mode. I wanted to find and confront this gunman.
I'm not getting verbaled, am I?
I shouldn't have trusted you. See, I'm trying to open my mind up to defence bars.
I know, it's just begging to be said.
Yeah, fair call. We have amazing guests every week. Search for I Catch Killers wherever you get your podcasts.
The money laundering stuff was fascinating, and we touched on that during our last chat a few years ago.
Yeah.
And
but of course, my mind is like mashed potatoes, so you'll have to tell me again.
Happy to.
How's your mind?
Yeah, it's interesting going back into that. Like we're just saying, crooks have to do something with the money. And what I found interesting during my time at the Crime Commission, I'd spent 7 years there, by the way. So I started there in 2012 and worked right through to early 2019 across several roles.
Yep.
But most of that time was within investigations where we would call it following the money. So we would find someone, didn't really matter who, we would find someone with what we considered undeclared wealth or wealth that they couldn't really explain.
Yeah.
And then work backwards. So it's like, why does this person suddenly have a lot of money? Like, they're not on our radars, they're not on our database. Like, how has this happened? And then we'd work backwards to figure out, are they holding money on someone else's behalf? Are they doing other things? So it's a bit different to where you'd normally catch a crook with drugs and then figure out what houses they owned. We kind of did the reverse.
Yes.
We'd find the people that owned lots of houses but hadn't lodged a tax return for 10 years, for example.
Well, it's intriguing, isn't it? And I suspect that most of us out in the world go, that chap has just bobbed up. Never really heard of him before 2 years ago when he bought a horse to run in the Melbourne Cup or when he bought, whatever it might be. I just made that up. But, you see these people turn up and suddenly they're buying, racehorses for huge figures and several of them, not people with a lot of age on them, and they seem to appear out of nowhere. They rose without trace, some of them, it seems. And you think, that's intriguing. And you just wonder what the real source of some of the wealth is and whether they represent money that might be flowing from overseas and whether it goes from A to B to C to the Dubai or somewhere and then over to somewhere and then to Australia. Is there overseas money that gets shuffled around?
Yeah, we saw so much of that.
Yeah.
And that's what our CEOs, I had 3 CEOs when I was there, but the Australian Crime Commission had very close links to definitely the Five Eyes intelligence partners, so across America, Canada, the UK and New Zealand. Right. And we were very tapped into what was going on the international stage in terms of crime and money laundering.
Yep.
And we would get intelligence reports from our partners, and we would obviously assess them and see how it might impact Australia. And one of the remits of that agency is to make Australia hostile to organised crime. So what can we do from a policy perspective, from a legislative perspective, a banking perspective? Where are the holes in our society that we can plug to make it harder?
You worked on sort of formulating, let's say, strategy. It's a word that I don't like much because everybody uses it, but strategy and policies to plug those holes. You worked on that.
We're on the very operational side. So we're on the fun side.
Yeah.
But there's a whole team of people, some of which I still know are in that area. Their job is to take all the operational outcomes that we materialised and then transfer them into actionable strategic options for the government to consider. So do we change the way banks operate? Do we change the way ATMs work? The Banking Royal Commission touched on some of this as well, because what they realised was it was a little bit too easy for people to put dirty money through banks.
Yeah.
And another example of that was what happened to Crown Casino. So I can't, again, go into a whole lot of detail, but what we were seeing and what was on the news was that there was a lot of dirty money coming into Crown Casino and just being laundered through.
I'm shocked by that.
Yeah, it caught me by surprise.
People go to casinos.
I know, caught us
with
by
large
surprise.
amounts of cash.
So what can we do, though, as a society to make it more difficult for casinos or other similar industries to allow that to happen? What kind of pressure can the government put on them to change their ways?
And in your view, as an outsider, do you think that the governments have been able to, the authorities have been able to do things that have worked?
Yes, yeah.
Well, that's good.
Well, we've seen what's happened with Crown. I was really pleased to see what happened there. I'm sure they weren't, but
was it pretty hot for a while then?
With Crown? Yeah, I mean, a lot's come out about what was going on there.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, with money laundering is there's often a legitimate use of the money, but potentially an illegitimate origin of the money.
Yes.
And the way to explain that is had a job where we were watching some drug dealers in the western suburbs of Melbourne. We watched them do a money handover of about $200,000. So we saw a bag get handed over, which we knew through other means was going to be about $200,000. We actually saw that person deliver that cash to an airport. I'm pretty sure it was one of the smaller airports in Melbourne, and then hand it to someone who got off a private jet who had come in from China.
Oh.
So the person who'd come in from China, they had found a way, because it's very hard to get money out of China.
Yes.
They were a high roller at the casino.
Yeah.
So how do they get cash in their hands in Melbourne that they can bet with? So they had made arrangements through some of the people we were looking at the time to just get $200,000. It was actually their money because they were quite wealthy back in China, but they couldn't get the money out of China.
I'm with you. So this is that, does it originate in India, but it doesn't matter.
Hawala.
And it's people operate by a system of trust.
Yes.
And sort of a nod and a wink across borders so that if a person in some Southeast Asian country or Middle Eastern country wants to transfer money to Australia, this is for the benefit of our listeners, they arrange for someone in Australia to produce the money on the basis that their interests can be repaid elsewhere.
Perfect.
Back over there. As long as we all trust each other and never Welsh, it works.
Correct.
And tend not to Welsh because the repercussions would be
fairly significant. And that's exactly what had happened in this case. So what we saw was a illegitimate source basically transferring value to a legitimate source.
Yes.
So when we arrested this person from the jet, he's like, this is my money.
Yeah.
But that's what we saw with Crown, was a lot of legitimate money being put in, but it was being fueled by the illegitimate money going through drug imports and drug trafficking, predominantly in Melbourne. Yeah. So it's kind of funny when you talk about cultural appropriation. What has happened is that organised crime has culturally appropriated what was a really perfect system of value transfer that originated in the Silk Road. Yeah, hundreds of years ago. So probably 1,000 years ago.
I'm going to say 15 years ago at least, and it might be more, a young would-be film producer came to me. I think he was a cameraman. He was a bright spark who wasn't a great writer, but he had a lot of ideas. And he had this idea for an action movie that the basis of it was
Hawala.
Hawala. Yeah. The basis of his crime movie was Hawala, and it was going to be a dual, Indian Australian production, etc. And it was quite an interesting plot.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to it, but it sort of opened. This is early 2000s. Opened my eyes to the potential of it and how long it had been going. Went all the way back to Marco Polo or somebody.
Yeah, I don't know, probably a long time, but he'd probably have a lot more content now because there's been a lot more come out in the media. There's been Four Corners episodes on it. There's been documentaries. It's a lot more now in the public domain than it ever has been, and it's still a very reliable way to transfer value over long distances, because the challenge it was responding to was, how do I literally transfer tons of gold, or the value of tons of gold, from one place that's 1,000 kilometres away to another place? Yeah. So they discovered a way to transfer that ton of gold just locally, just within its own region, and then using a trusted third party, get the value transferred elsewhere.
As long as you've got trusted third parties with access to enough cash to do it and make it work.
Yeah, the only way it really works is if you've got hundreds, if not thousands of people who want to use that service. Because the way we used to call them controllers, a controller, basically an accountant, would keep a ledger. Yeah. Literally a ledger, like a giant Excel spreadsheet. They'd say, okay, person A has $100 that needs to go to Vietnam, for example. They just have to wait for someone from Vietnam to need $100 to go back the other way. Okay. So you basically go into a waiting list going, I need to send $10,000 to Colombia legitimately. Oh, I found someone in Colombia that wants to send $10,000 to Melbourne.
Okay. So this is like this is like Betfair racing in a sense. Of,
essentially that.
Yeah. And they clip the ticket. They pick up
they take a bit of commission.
1 or 2% or whatever it might be.
Yep. And the beauty of it is there's no paper trail. So other than the cash at the end of the day, and getting back to our original conversation, what do we do with the cash when we get it? Where does it hit the bank and when does it hit the bank? So what we would often see is someone has $100,000 deposited. Where did that come from? And when you look at it, it's actually been handed to them in the McDonald's car park.
Yes.
A day earlier from someone they've never met before.
I think you might have told us that you were watching while
we saw
McDonald's car park.
Yeah, saw heaps of them. And again, that's in the Four Corners.
A rental car pulls in.
Yeah, rental car pulls in. And again, if you search for hawala and Four Corners, there's a really good episode on this. And they go into a lot more detail than I probably would. So the AFP and the ACIC talk a lot about how they went about this particular operation in the Four Corners episode. And they talk about meeting in public places and nothing against McDonald's, just happens to be a car park. They did it in shopping centres, they did it in sports grounds, anywhere that was public, and hand over the money.
Sports grounds are interesting, aren't they? It seems that some particularly cautious crooks like walking around ovals or meeting out in the
walk
open.
Walk and talk.
Very difficult to monitor them. I think even during the gangland wars that there was a couple of them used to meet in swimming pools with very, very briefs on, so that it was clear there was no taping going on.
Absolutely. I was about to mention that exact thing. Yeah, I don't have any specific examples, but I know that they used to meet in saunas, steam rooms, swimming pools, anywhere that was, you couldn't tell if they were wearing a wire, and it was also very hard to be observed while they're talking because it's quite a private setting, so getting a surveillance operative into those settings can be quite difficult as well.
Okay.
So, and it's always safer to be away from your home when you're doing that kind of thing.
True. No, very interesting.
Than when the police are listening.
And perhaps some careful chaps might ride push bikes around because they haven't got any identity. And you're fairly anonymous on a push bike with a helmet on.
Yeah.
You're just another person. Just another geezer on a push bike.
I mean, you make a good point. I don't think I pulled over many people on bikes. Maybe I should have done that when I was a junior cop.
I only say this because one of my colleagues here was somewhere and he was there to meet a very heavy-duty bloke who's killed several people, and he's very scary. And he's waiting there. And next thing, this bloke pushes up on a push bike, gets off and takes the helmet off and goes, oh, my God, he could have just killed me.
That's a great story.
And he said it's very, very spooky when the man involved, who is notorious for killing people, that's how he appeared.
Perfect.
Along the Yarra somewhere.
Yep.
And he's one of 800 people on push bikes right along the Yarra.
It's pretty hard to tail a pushy for a surveillance crew to keep on a push bike. It's very difficult. You just dart around laneways. Dart around. You can go wrong way down a one-way street. It's pretty smart.
You need some good push bike riders. But David Bartlett has been our guest today, and I think he may well return next week. Thanks for coming in, David.
No worries.
Where are you off to next?
I'm about to go straight to the airport, fly to beautiful Canberra.
And sell your ideas there?
Yeah, so I've got 2 meetings tomorrow with the ACIC and the AFP to talk about my Safer Places Network platform.
David, this idea of yours, it's a really interesting initiative, and we're going to hear a lot about it next week. Thanks for listening. Life and Crimes is a Sunday Herald Sun production for True Crime Australia. Our producer is Jonty Burton. For my columns, features and more, go to heraldsun.com.au/Andrew Rule, one word. For advertising inquiries, go to newspodcastssold@news.com.au. That is all one word, newspodcastssold. And if you want further information about this episode, links are in the description.